Again, my name is Robin James, and I'm the Development and Marketing Director for Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging. And we will wrap up no later than 11:30 this morning, so just rest assured that we will not keep you longer than anticipated. We have two very special keynote speakers, Advocacy and its resolutions for residents. Virginia Moore Bell, she serves as the Director for Alabama for the Office of State Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. And Ryan Leonard, and he is with our agency, M4A, and he serves as the Ombudsman Representative. Virginia has served in her capacity for over 18 years, and she has a lot of responsibility because she provides the statewide oversight for all long-term care facilities across Alabama. She's a licensed social worker, and then prior to her her position with the state, she also served with Alabama Department of Senior Services as their legal developer. And so she oversaw all of our legal service providers across the state. And Ryan Leonard, he has a bachelor's in history and mass communications, also a bachelor's in social work. And he actually was a banker for 20 something years until he got his degree in social work to follow his passion. And so he also serves on many local community task forces and committees, as does Miss Bell. I've had the opportunity to work for both of them for many years, and I just can't say enough about their passion for residents who reside in a long-term care facility, and just the work that they both do. So the next slide, please, Jeremy. I do want to recognize Carlette Smith with Human Resource Options. Her contact information is on the slide, and her website is humanresourceoptions.com. She is our CEU provider, so if you have any issues with your CEU or any questions, you can always reach out to Carlette directly. So we do want to thank Carlette for her partnership. She's been helping us with these since we started these classes in August. The next class and the last class for 2020 will be on December 16th. And this is a really special, near and dear to my heart. I had kind of put this class together, and it's called Take a Stand Against Elder Abuse. So we held one of these, I think, earlier in the year. And so we highly encourage you all to attend the last class that we're going to, or the webinar for 2020. And so what we're going to do starting in January, we will have these on a monthly basis. So there'll be 12 next year. And we love your suggestions. I know in the evaluation form that Miss Carlette has, it does ask for some future topics that you would like us all to cover. And so we really do want all of your input. So please, please fill that out. Okay, next slide. And just as a reminder, we are one of 13 area agencies in Alabama. Every county in the country is represented by a local AAA, is what we're called. And all of our overall mission is to help consumers of all ages age in place within their community. Okay, next slide. Okay. We also, all of us across the country have an Aging and Disability Resource Center, which really serves as the single point of entry for all long-term care support and services. And so when a consumer reaches out to any of the local area agencies, we will do a very thorough, comprehensive screening of all programs and services, connect them with resources. And this really ensures that a consumer who needs help that they get all holistic help. They don't just get help with their medicine or help with a meal, that we know every single thing that they could qualify for. So we always say, start by reaching out to your local area agency on aging, okay? And these are just some of our core programs and services. And I'll just, I know it for you who attend these regularly, I sound like a squeaky wheel, but we do have a lot of different programs and services. And so you can just see the vast array that we provide consumers, okay? Very easy, at least for our agency, to make an electronic referral rather than picking up the phone and calling. You can always call us, but you can also go to our website at m4a.org, and the lime green button at the top says make a referral. And you can just say, it's very simple process. And we just ask that you make sure that you include the age of the individual that needs the help and a good working phone number. Okay. And these are just some of the resources that we have. We have thousands of these to distribute. We have a lot of resources, including on the Ombudsman program. So if you all you can always reach out to our agency and just say that you need, 200 of a guide for healthcare workers or the book or any resources, and we will make sure to get those to you. Okay, and then my last slide before I turn it over to Miss Bell. Recently with COVID, M4A, we put together a critical needs fund, and this serves really as a platform to help people that typically will not qualify for one of our programs or services, but they're in a crisis. They have an immediate need. It could be keeping their power bill on. They need a heater. They don't have enough food, and all ages. Our agency received as all the AAAs, some federal COVID CARES Act funding. And that funding has been really wonderful to help people 60 and above, but that funding can only be used for older adults. And so this critical needs fund is very instrumental for people of any age. So we've been pretty successful with it. We are always looking for additional donations for this, and I'm not asking for that today, but I am letting you know that we did apply for a $50,000 grant recently. And if so, we would have $50,000 towards this fund on January 1. So this is just to remind you all that if you know of a family in need, please reach out within our 5-county area, which is Blount, Chilton, St. Clair, Shelby, or Walker counties. Please just have them contact our office, because there's a good chance that we'll be able to help them with their critical need. Okay.
All right, Virginia, I am going to try to unmute you. And Robin, do you want to go over first the CEUs and then revisit at the end?
Yeah, I will post this in the chat, and we will show the slide at the very end of today's webinar. But there is a survey that has to be completed within 24 hours for you to get your 1.5 CEU.
All right, thank you, Jeremy, and thank you to Robin. And certainly M4A for this wonderful, unique opportunity for me to talk about the Ombudsman program. The program is so near and dear to my heart that I just love every opportunity to do that. Now, as Jeremy said, there is we're having some technical difficulties, so somebody will have to tell me if you can't hear me as clearly as you need to. Thank you all so much for being a part of this listening audience. I'm excited to talk to you about the Ombudsman program, and we'll go ahead and get started. As Robin said, I am the director of the Office of State Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and we are housed with the Alabama Department of Senior Services, under the Department of Senior Services as well, where Jean Brown is our commissioner, and she is extremely passionate and supportive of the Ombudsman program. And we're just very blessed to have her as our leader. And so I'll go ahead and get started and talk about the program and some of the functions. So Jeremy, next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about the program description. The program itself was established under the Older Americans Act, and it is a person-centered consumer protection service. So that just simply means that our focus is on the person who is in the long-term care facility. And so we provide information to consumers about long-term care. Now, the word ombudsman is really a very funny word, sounding word, and it just simply means, it's a Swedish word. And so it's pronounced ombudsman. And it simply means one who speaks on behalf of another. So we're the advocates. We, as ombudsman, we help to resolve problems. We advocate for rights of individuals who are in long-term care facilities. And we hope to, through this effort, to maximize their independence, their well-being, and their health. Now, what type of facilities are we talking about? We're talking about nursing facilities, and that's all the nursing facilities within the state of Alabama, assisted living facilities, board and care, and any other similar adult care facilities. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the authority to operate the program. So there's a federal law, and that's Section 712 of the Older Americans Act of 1965 as amended. It requires each state agency on aging, and for Alabama, as I just said, it is the Alabama Department of Senior Services. So it requires each state agency on aging to put in its state plan assurances that it'll carry out all these federal statutory responsibilities, which are placed under this Section 712. And it does permit, although the statute does permit some contractor organizations and sometimes for other states, other agencies to perform the specific functions and aspects of the program, but the Office of the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program remains responsible for the performance of the activities under this Section 712 of the Older Americans Act. Now, I thought this was just good to give you some little information about the act itself. You know, I know no one probably has time to read all of this, but just to know exactly where the act is. It's much longer and more lengthy than this, but we thought we'd just break it out and give you just a small portion of what the federal law says about this program. Next slide, please. Now, the state law. So each state, although there's a federal law, each state has its own state law that should mirror the federal law. So it should be very similar to the federal law, and as particular the mandates that are covered in the federal law. So for Alabama, we have the Alabama Act 85-657, which is called the Long-Term Residential Healthcare Recipient Ombudsman Act of 1985. And it authorizes the state long-term care ombudsman and, of course, the Department of Senior Services, which is our state unit on aging office, to investigate complaints concerning healthcare and other providers and institutions and anything that threatens patients or residents of healthcare. And it says here domiciliary and residential facility. And the act certainly goes much further, and it requires appointment and training and certification of at least one local ombudsman representative by each area agency on aging office. Now, note here at the very bottom that the state law has been revised. So some of this language is not going to be the same moving forward, hopefully. It is with the legislature, and it has not been approved yet, but there have been some revisions, and some of it relates to obsolete language. Some of it relates to the way the wording in terms of this state law, how it's phrased in terms of investigate, because the office investigates. The department does not. Department of Senior Services does not investigate. The office does. So there'll be some changes, and of course the word domiciliary, we don't use that word anymore. So there are some changes. So it's waiting for the legislature to approve it, but do know that since the law is still on the books, that's applicable, and we're putting it here so that you'll see it. But we mainly operate by the federal law. Next slide, please. Let's do a little historical overview. So this just shows you at a glance how the program has evolved. So it'll just show you from 1970s, it was created as a part of President Nixon's initiative to improve some conditions and respond to widespread reports of resident abuse in the nation's nursing facilities. So in the 70s, there was a lot of conversation and concern all across the United States about issues and problems with individuals in nursing facilities or nursing homes, as they call them at the time. And so there were just many issues. And so this was enacted to try to address those kind of issues and to put in place an advocate for those individuals. So in 1970s, the program expanded to boarding care. And because initially it was just nursing. And then it went to boarding care and similar adult care facilities. Now, at that time, it didn't expressly say assisted living, but it was widely interpreted, though, that it would include assisted living. And then, as you'll see, in 92, the program became part of the Title VII of the Older Americans Act, which covers abuse and those functions with aging and disabilities. And then 2000, assisted living became expressly added in part of the definition of long-term care, and that was placed in the Older Americans Act. And then in 2016, the act was reauthorized, and there was some more clarifications and changes to the act. So the whole purpose of this, though, and you'll see that noted at the bottom, is to just understand that the function and the purpose is for the program to be an autonomous entity that's able to represent consumer interests. So that's the whole gist of what this program is about, to represent those interests of all those individuals who are living and residing in long-term care facilities. Next slide, please. So just a bit more about the historical overview. So we talked about the State Unit on Aging, and that's the Alabama Department of Senior Services. That gives the historical part of it, says that the State Unit on Aging is required to establish the office. And so for Alabama, we do have an office, and I, as the state ombudsman, head the office for long-term care ombudsman. And so some of the activities that come under the office and under the State Unit on Aging, in terms of them ensuring that these activities are carried out, is certainly promote a development of a citizen organization and train volunteers. Now, we do not have a citizen organization per se identified in Alabama as of now. We did have one, but there was some issues with the person who was heading that became ill, and so it just didn't get picked up by anyone else at the time. But we do have volunteers. And so what I want to say specifically about the volunteers is that that's a very crucial part of our program. We encourage anyone who's interested in volunteering to contact the local area agency on aging offices and contact those ombudsmen and let them know that you're interested in volunteering with the program. You will be trained extensively and have to go through a very stringent training process, and then given some guidance regarding what your role will play. So for Alabama, the role is a friendly visitor for that volunteer. That just simply means that we work with the nursing facilities to pair a volunteer with a resident who is perhaps, for lack of a better word, unbefriended, someone who does not have anyone, does not have any family, perhaps does not have anyone else to look out for them, to contact them. And this visitor will be someone who just connects with an individual. Everyone needs some human connection. Everyone needs someone. And that person could go and certainly connect with them, conversations, read a book, whatever is needed by that resident, send a nice card, anything that's needed. But all of that is worked through the nursing or facilities in particular to ensure that that the residents are getting what they need, but also the facility is aware of that volunteer that's coming in, because we understand the facility has a responsibility for the safety of all individuals in the facilities. And so we work very closely with them. Now, we've lost a few volunteers due to this pandemic, but we would love to have more volunteers. So if you're interested, please contact your local area agency on aging office and let them know that you're interested in volunteering. Also, another activity is identify significant problems by establishing a statewide reporting system for complaints and to work to investigate and resolve any problems. Now, what happens here is that we do have a system that we already have in place, and this system does track the number of complaints that we receive. We report this information to the state. We also report this information to the federal government, so that we do not report and we do not send identifying information, but just data. It's just numbers, how many complaints of this type or another, complaints of abuse, neglect, exploitation, any type of complaints, care complaints. So we keep track of all of that. And so it's important that we do that, because not only is it important for us to track this kind of information, but it lets us know where our concerns are, what areas that we need more work to do in terms of where we maybe need to specify some improvements, some areas of improvement. So this is very important to us, and we have some really good data that we've collected on all the type of complaints that we investigate, that we receive, investigate, and even the ones that we resolve. Because, you know, the mission is to try to resolve complaints to the satisfaction of the resident. So we work to do that. And if we can resolve it, then perhaps those complaints will not become regulatory issues. They don't have to necessarily go up. So that just depends on our work, our investigation, and it also depends on the resident being satisfied or whoever brings that complaint to our attention. Another activity, monitor the development and implementation of federal, state, and local long-term care laws and policies. Now, for this one, it's important that local ombudsman, state ombudsman, that we are aware of any laws that may adversely affect any residents in long-term care facilities. And we're to monitor those laws and address them. So that's a very important part and function of our work as well. Another one is to gain access to long-term care facilities and to resident records. Now, excuse me, you all, I'm nursing a little allergy here, so I apologize for the interruptions here. But as far as gaining access to facilities, we do have versus regarding our federal mandates and, of course, state law as well, that ombudsmen have access to long-term care facilities. And normally we're going in those facilities unannounced. But we all know that due to COVID, there are some changes. So in order for us to work cooperatively with facilities to ensure that, you know, we're following all the guidelines and the protocols that the facilities have in place with regard to transmission of infection and cross-contamination, we are contacting facilities to let them know that we would like to make a visit with a particular resident. And we are still maintaining some confidentiality by asking them to put us in an area where we can still talk freely to residents. But we are calling ahead right now. But the normal function is that we go unannounced to facilities. Next slide, please. Another activity is to protect the confidentiality of resident records, complainants' identities, and ombudsman files. This is extremely important to us, and we take it very, very seriously. So when, as you know, as I said, we're the advocate for the residents. So we're their advocates. So the things that they bring to our attention, if they wish for some of those things to remain confidential, and just for us to find ways to work through trying to resolve those things, we can do that. It may make it a little bit more complex to do it, but we try to work toward what they wish for us to do. Now, we protect these records at all costs. Our records are never released unless we have a process in place for release of records. There are forms that have to be filled out by whoever's requesting these records. They have to prove to us through copies of their documentation that they are either a power of attorney or some other legal representative, a guardian. Of course, the resident can always, if a resident has competency, they can always say, I'd like my own records to be released. But we still have to go through all these steps in this process. No records are released unless it comes to my office. The local collects that information, the request. They send whatever necessary forms to the person who's requesting that, the records. Then that comes to my office. I review that. I also allow our general counsel to review that information. And then based on our determination whether everything is accurate in terms of the documents from the person who's requesting the records, then we may release those records. However, usually it's a court order for us to release records. So normally we don't release them. So understand we take this very seriously and not lightly. And so usually it's a court order or a resident's signed consent that they want records released or express consent that they want records released. And we do have protect files. Our ombudsmen have locked file cabinets, locked doors in their offices, and they don't share that information with anyone outside of my office without consent from my office. Also, the ombudsman provided immunity. They have immunity to their work when it's good faith performance of their duties. And so, as I said, we have policies and procedures in place for all of our ombudsmen, and they must follow those policies and procedures. They must protect the confidentiality of records. They must protect the identity of anyone who wishes not for their identity to be disclosed. And so if anyone violates those kind of protections, then there are certainly repercussions for ombudsmen, but they have immunity when they do stay within the realm and the scope of the services that are provided and stay within the policies which state what they should and should not do. So we've not had really any issues with that. Ombudsmen are very good to follow their own policies, and we stay very closely with them on that. Then, of course, ensure prohibitions against willful interference with official duties of an ombudsman and or any retaliation against an ombudsman, resident, or other individual for assisting the program and the performance of its duties. So that's important. No one should interfere with the duties of the ombudsman. So if we're investigating an issue, then there shouldn't be any interference on the part of anyone on the staff at a facility, and there shouldn't be any interference from anyone from my office or from a local ombudsman office to prevent them from investigating an issue or reporting an issue. So that's very important, and there are laws and rules against that as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just talking about the program structure and function. And some of this we've already talked about, but I'll just kind of touch back on it again, that the Department of Senior Services establishes and operates the office directly. And here it says the state ombudsman shall be appointed by the Department of Senior Services and certainly answer to the commissioner. But you will see that that's under the code that it has been revised. So as it stands, that's the way it's written, but there's some revisions because now the state ombudsman, my position is a merit system position. So it is not an appointed position anymore. It used to be, but it has changed to a merit system position. And that is reflected in the new revised code of Alabama for the ombudsman program. And so let's go to this other part of it where it says that there should be no conflict of interest. So my commissioner will definitely need to ensure that there's no conflict of interest with me serving as the state ombudsman. And certainly I have to ensure that there's no conflict of interest with a local ombudsman serving as local ombudsman representative. So that just means that, I have to show that I don't have a conflict. I have to sign that I do not have a conflict of any kind, no financial conflict, no personal conflict. I don't own any long-term care facilities. I don't have any personal affiliations with anyone. And so that is put in place to ensure that I, as the state ombudsman, and that the local ombudsman representatives are impartial, that they vigorously and impartially investigate and resolve complaints, and they promote the good quality of care in long-term care facilities. So that's going to stay the same. That section wouldn't change, with the changes in the code. But I just wanted to point that out, that my position is merit system. So also, as a state ombudsman, I have to ensure that there's, I already said this, there's no profit, so no financial obligations or nothing like that. So all of that has to be not only expressed, but I have to sign a document saying that I have no vested interest, and the locals do the same, so that we've got those assurances that no one is in a position where they can be compromised. Thank you for that. Let's go to the next slide. So at a minimum, the office, so my office has one full-time, and the local office has at least at a minimum one full. So for my office is one state ombudsman, and I have to be full-time. Every state has one state ombudsman. Every state. Now, doesn't matter how they get there, whether they're appointed, merit system, the governor appoints them, the state unit on aging director appoints them, or their merit system. It doesn't matter how they get there. It just means that there's one state ombudsman. However, and that person has to be full-time. However, there has to be at least one local ombudsman representative for each local area agency on aging office to represent those counties within that area. So M4A's got 5 counties. So Ryan Leonard represents that area for M4A. And so, 13 area agencies all across the state. So there's at least one full-time ombudsman in each of those 13 area agencies on aging. Now, there may be many other ombudsmen as well, but it has to be at least one. And so for some of those larger AAA agencies that have many counties, and especially those that are rural counties, and they're, really far to travel, and maybe there are a lot of nursing facilities or assisted living, there may be more than one full-time ombudsman, or maybe one full-time and perhaps one part-time. But all the ombudsmen have to be certified, and you'll see the statute here addresses that it says they have to be certified, and they can be decertified as well. But my office does the certification. So I have to train all local ombudsmen that the area agencies on aging hire the individual to come to my office to be trained as a local ombudsman. And then I have to certify them. I give them an examination, and they pass the examination, and then a process of training as well. Then they're certified. And then, of course, if we talked about that immunity, and so earlier, so if there's any reason where I need to decertify them, then my office has that authority to do that. And once they no longer work for the area agency as a local ombudsman, then they would be certainly decertified as well. And so the same about the affiliations, and we talked about that earlier, that's all expressed, and that has to be addressed before that individual is certified. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of these roles of the ombudsman, because there are some great roles. So companion. So we talked about the friendly visitor. And so that's the main function that we try to use the friendly visitor for. Now, we do some ombudsmen, we're considered friendly. Our function has to be one of friendliness, and it has to be one of establishing trust with the residents, because residents are not going to talk to us if they can't trust us. If they don't understand that we're the individuals who work closely with them and address their needs, and that we would protect whatever they wish for us to protect, but we also, we have to inform them of, I can protect certain things, but if you want the facility to address these issues and get them right, then sometimes it makes it more important. Let's share some information and work with folks who are trying to help you better serve you. So we're in that role of trying to establish the trust, and we use the friendly visitors as well for that companionship. Advocate. So we talked about that. So we work not only to address issues from the residents, but their family or friends. It may be that, they're legal authorities, and maybe that they're not legal authorities, but they're just friends or family members. Could be a daughter, and the daughter is listed as a sponsor for the nursing home, and she has no legal authority, but she has the vested interest in helping her mom, or a son who's having a vested interest in helping his mother or father or family member, whoever it may be. And that, as long as that person has the interest to protect the health, safety, welfare, and rights of the residents, we work with them. And so that's our job, to do all these things, but we work with those individuals who also want to do those things. We work with staff who have issues with residents, and they're trying to protect their best interests, and they want to address those interests to us and ask us to help with that. So we work to do that as well, as long as it's for the health, safety, welfare, and rights of the resident. Educator. The Ombudsman works to educate residents, families, friends, or potential consumers about rights and responsibilities in a facility. You know, how many times someone will go to a facility and has no idea of what it takes to be a resident in a facility, or a family member will put a resident in and does not understand the long-term care system, does not understand signing certain admission documents and what kind of questions to ask, what's required, does not understand a lot about Medicaid, nursing home Medicaid eligibility and that process, and how do you become eligible? What are the steps that you take? What is abuse? What's expected? What are your rights? Can you open your mail? Can you not open your mail? Can you change your pharmacy? All these, can you change your physician? All kinds of questions that I'm sure folks may not know, but we as educators, we educate the general public. We do community education. We're not doing as much of that either, and we're doing it virtually, the part that we're doing right now. But that's the normal role of an ombudsman, is to go out and educate everybody, any organization, church member, church groups, civic groups, whomever, anybody who wants to know about the long-term care system, the ombudsman program, and what kind of things you need to know, even alternatives to long-term care. So we're addressing those kinds of things. What kinds of programs, like the area agencies have in place, mid-waiver and other programs and services, caregiver programs, that are beneficial to you as a person who may, get to that point where you need it, you're high risk, or you just want more information. So we talk to you about that as well, because we want to keep residents at home as long as they can stay home. And then when they go to long-term care, and they need that those skill services, then they get all the information and the services they need, but they understand that as well. A mediator. So a mediator is someone who kind of comes to you. I think everyone knows what that is. So it's like between the resident and staff, the resident and community or local government, resident and other residents, or resident and family. Sometimes there are issues between family members. Resident wants one thing, a family member wants another. So our position is we're trying to mediate that, get everybody on the same page. Facility staff call us all the time, ask us to do this. We love doing that, because what we try to do is get everyone on the same page and allow everybody to understand that some issues can be addressed, and they don't have to be go up to regulatory necessarily. These issues can be addressed and can be resolved right there at the facility. So we're always happy to mediate. And there are a lot of issues with family members as well, and we try to work through and resolve those issues. That's a really important function, and I ask Ombudsman to utilize that one a lot to help folks, especially when there are some issues that folks are stuck and they can't move any further. And we just suggest, why don't we do a mediation and get all the staff involved as necessary, and your family, and everyone gets around the table, and let's try to work this out. So a broker, that's also a good position and a function, a good role. And it's a referral agency. So, we try to link folks with other agencies and services so that they need, and maybe not our agency can do this, maybe another agency can. So when we can do that, we do. Certainly I know, like with the Gateway to the Community, when those residents and facilities are interested in transitioning out, then we make referrals to Gateway. And, we can do that, and we can work with residents on that. I think Ryan's going to speak a little bit more about that, so I won't get into that too much. And let's move on so I can give Ryan enough time to do some things as well. Talk about his part. So we talked about some of the ombudsman roles. Let's talk about the responsibilities. Identify, investigate, and resolve complaints they may be made by the resident or on behalf of the resident. So that's what we do. We've got to identify what those things are. Sometimes they're just brought to us and given to us. So it's no process of identification. Someone calls and says, I've got an issue, I've got a complaint, I've got a concern. And we try to address, have you talked to someone about this? Have you addressed it? Yes, I have, and nothing has happened. Now let's see what we can do. We'll step in and try to investigate and try to resolve it. Do you want someone to know about it? Do you want other parties involved? all those things will be worked out in that process. But that's the main function of the Ombudsman. Provide information to residents about long-term care. We do that all the time. Represent the interests of residents. We've talked about that already. And analyze and comment on law. We've already talked about that. So all of these are some key responsibilities. Next slide, please. We talked about education. So I'm kind of reiterating some of it, but this spells it out a little bit more. Educating consumers and the general public about all kinds of issues. Educate and inform residents about this. We just mentioned gateway to community living. And then as the Ombudsman, we also conduct the baseline quality of life surveys. That means the initial survey that Medicaid gives us. We conduct that one to ask those questions that are on that survey. Then we conduct an 11th month after that resident has been transitioned out. And then we go back to their home and conduct a 24th month. So it is an opportunity to see, and these are the same questions, how they're answering those questions from each stage, when they're in the facility, when they're out for 11 months, and then when they're out again, 24 months. So has things stayed the same? Have there been improvements? Have they declined? Or at least the answering of the question shows some decline or improvement, or are they satisfied? So those are really, that's an important function of the Ombudsman program as well. We talked about citizens organization, and then technical support for resident and family councils. So as we know, all facilities should have at least a family council. We try to, resident council, we try to encourage family council. I'd love to see a family council at every facility, but I do know that some don't have them right now, but they should all have a resident council. And so we have to be invited to those council meetings. That's the residents' council meeting, that's the family's council meeting, and it's not ours. So we have to be invited. We do communicate and say we'd like to come, talk about the program, even talk about the concerns they may want to share within that meeting to try to help resolve them. Because maybe, these are concerns that have never been brought to our attention. So if we're invited, we get to hear some things that we can address and work on. And so we just continue to advocate for changes to improve the quality of life of residents in long-term care facilities. Next slide, please. So who's the program available to? Any residents of any long-term care facility, and it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the age. There's no age requirement. There's no fee associated with it. There's no cost whatsoever. So anyone who's a resident of a long-term care facility can receive the services of the Ombudsman program. So friends and relatives of persons who live in long-term care facilities, if they, I mentioned that earlier, if they're acting on the best interest of that resident, they can contact us and say, we'd like for you to assist us with an issue that I have with my mother or my sister or another loved one in a long-term care facility. And I need you to assist with those concerns. Long-term care facility staff members and administrators with resident-related concerns. So I mentioned that earlier. If you, as a staff person, you're working in the best interest of that resident, and we know that sometimes we do have some residents who are difficult to care for and who are not following the guidance, the care guidance that's provided by medical directors or nursing staff, and some of them sometimes with behaviors that are not necessarily identified with a disease process, then these are folks that we can still work with to try to help them. We have to try to help the staff because you're trying to do the best, if you're a staff person, the best that you can, and we're trying to work with you because you're trying to help that resident. So also individuals and families who are considering nursing home placement as a long-term care option, I talked about that, giving that good information and giving them some options to long-term care. If you've never been in long-term care, you wouldn't know necessarily what to expect. You wouldn't know what anything about an admissions process or signing a form or what you should sign or should not sign. So the community at large, we work with them, we provide services to them, and any other interested group or party who's looking out for the welfare of any person who's in a long-term care facility. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've mentioned this somewhat already, but just to let you know that, there have been changes, of course, and I think everybody already knows this, but that because of COVID, visitation restrictions within the facilities, have been changed. And so we're currently conducting visitation on a case-by-case basis. So we try very much to investigate and provide some advocacy efforts. And those things are still going on now, but we try to do those things through phone conferences, Skype, video conferencing, and some other virtual means. It's safer. And it's important that we work with facilities to do that at this time. We want to keep everybody safe. The general community, our own families, I want to keep the Ombudsman safe, but certainly the residents and the staff who are working so diligently to care for all of those residents in the facilities, we do want to do whatever is necessary to keep everyone safe. So as I said, it's a case-by-case basis. So when there are some cases that we feel we haven't got enough information, we don't get a clear enough picture of what's going on, and something is pretty severe, we then request that we come in and make that visit inside the facility. So we're doing that way. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is my contact information. And I hope I didn't run through it too fast, but I want to give Ryan a chance to tell you some information. And I also want to give an opportunity for you to ask me any questions. I would love to do that, to answer questions. But you'll see my address, and I'm downtown Montgomery. You'll see the address, and my email is virginia.bell@adss.alabama.gov. You'll see our website, which for ADSS is www.alabamaageline.gov, and of course the phone numbers as well. The office number 242-5753. That's 334, of course, and then 1-877. That's the toll free 1-877-425-2243. And then, of course, you'll see to contact the local ombudsman representatives in their regions, 1-800-AGE-LINE, and that is 243-5463. So I thank you all so very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to any questions, and I'll turn it back over to Jeremy and Robin. And thank you all again.
Thank you so much. Virginia, can you still hear us? Thank you so much, Virginia. Can you hear us loud and clear?
I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
I have to do now. I'm going to pass it over. This is Jeremy. I'm the Alabama Cares Coordinator here at M4A, and I'm helping Ms. Robin James, our Marketing Director, to coordinate this live stream. And of course, like Virginia said, we're having to make adjustments and adapt to things that are thrown our way during this unique year, and one of which, like today, with our technical difficulties with the Zoom presentation, we're trying our best to adapt here. So what we're going to do, Virginia, we've got Virginia, the state ombudsman, on the phone. I'm going to mute you, Virginia, and I don't see any questions right now, but we're still live with our audio. So what we're going to do, Ryan's here with me. He's going to take it over from here, and he's going to be able to present with the audio, but I'm going to put you on mute, Virginia. So if there are any questions that pop up, we'll just relay those to you so that we can get those answered.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here to share with you all about the role of the local ombudsman representative. I will do my best to keep from going over things that Virginia Bell, our state ombudsman, has already covered. Virginia Bell has done an excellent job of covering the ombudsman program, particularly as it relates to describing the ombudsman program, its history, the legal codes, and the various roles ombudsmen play in advocating for residents. To keep things from becoming redundant, I will try to touch on some things that Virginia Bell has perhaps covered, but we'll try to go into a little bit more detail, and that you all will get to hear about what local ombudsman representatives do on a daily basis. And my slides are very similar to Virginia Bell's, in that a lot of what I cover in my slides has already been mentioned in Virginia Bell's PowerPoint. But rather than going over the slides about the history of the ombudsman program and the various roles, an ombudsman plays in advocating for residents, I will start with the slide about complaints. But before I do that, so Jeremy, you can go to slide 6 if you want to. But before I do that, I want to mention that at M4A, we have a lead ombudsman representative, which is me, and then we have a part-time ombudsman whose name is Audrey Burst. So I'm the lead ombudsman representative. She's the part-time ombudsman representative. But we also have several backup ombudsman representatives who are also certified and can fill in when both of us, Audrey, or me, are unavailable. And at the end of this PowerPoint, you will see our contact information. And now regarding this slide about receiving complaints, anyone can call the ombudsman representative to voice a complaint, such as the resident, a legal representative, a family member, a friend, or a staff. And then common complaints that we get as ombudsman representatives can be complaints about food, missing or lost items, slow response to call lights or requests for assistance, not receiving medication, poor care, unsanitary conditions, not being able to leave the facility and or exercising the right to make personal choices. Complaints can be about staff attitudes, low staffing levels, abuse or neglect, and inappropriate or involuntary discharge. You will notice that I did not just mention in the types of complaints a slow response time to call lights. Sometimes the problem is not with staff responding to call lights in a timely manner. It is responding to a resident's request for assistance in a timely manner. Just because I answer a call light within 5 minutes or less does not mean that I've responded to a resident's request for assistance in a timely manner. And if I answer a call light within even a minute, but all I do is ask what the resident needs and then I turn off the call light, tell the resident I will be back and walk out, I have not actually responded to the request for assistance in a timely manner. And if it takes me 45 minutes or more for me to go back to a resident's room to actually address why the resident pressed their call light to begin with, then I have not responded to a request for assistance in a timely manner. By the way, staff should know or should have been taught to not turn off a call light until the need is addressed for which the call light was pressed. And if staff are doing that, it's probably because they don't want to keep hearing the noise from the call light, so they simply turn it off. The problem with doing that is that they may forget to come back. And if they do forget, other staff members may not know that the resident's call light was ever on. And as an ombudsman representative, I try hard to advocate for facilities making sure their staff are not turning off call lights before a resident's need for pressing it was met. And before moving on to another slide, I want to mention that advocating against involuntary discharges, which I mentioned in this slide, is one of the most important things we do as ombudsman representatives. It can be a very scary thing for a resident or their family members to receive a discharge notice from a facility, and I'm speaking about nursing homes here. As an ombudsman representative, I've found that many discharge notices should have never been issued in the first place. Time and again, facilities accept residents, particularly those with dementia, okay, on the grounds that they can meet the needs of a resident, only to turn around and try to discharge that same resident for behaviors that are consistent with that resident's diagnosis or diagnoses. And as an ombudsman representative, I do my best to investigate every time I get notification of a discharge notice being issued to a resident. And often I find that a facility has agreed to discharge a resident for a certain behavior that was consistent with the resident's diagnosis or diagnoses at the time of admission. And when this is the case, I often assist with appealing such discharges on the grounds that the facility should have been prepared at the time of admission for any behaviors that might accompany a resident's diagnosis or diagnoses either at the time or after the resident was admitted to the facility. And as ombudsman representatives, we often see discharge notices being issued for things such as behavioral issues where a resident is not paying his or her bills. Now, Jeremy, if we can now move to slide 10, because I don't want to go over things that have already been discussed by Virginia Bell. M4A ombudsman representatives provide the following information when it comes to providing long-term care guidance. We provide information on what it takes to get admitted to a nursing home or assisted living facility. We also provide information on applying for nursing home Medicaid and that process. We provide information on other agencies and resources that may be able to help a family or individual obtain the services they need. Now, I do want to point out here that we are not experts on all resources. So we do have at M4A, we do have a department called the Aging and Disability Resource Center that can fully assess someone for the various services that they may qualify for, or if there's an agency that individual needs to maybe contact. ADRC can certainly help with that. But from our end as ombudsman, examples of when we can refer folks, it can include referring individuals to the Jan Neal law firm that contracts with M4A to provide legal guidance. This can be very beneficial when individuals and their families are trying to avoid, any pitfalls that might affect Medicaid eligibility, or where an individual may need to appoint someone as their power of attorney. Other examples can include when we refer individuals and their family members to other ombudsman representatives outside of the M4A service area. For instance, they may, another ombudsman who serves another area may be more familiar with the facilities in his or her area than I would be. So that's an example of when I would refer the individual to another ombudsman representative. And now, Jeremy, if we can move to slide 11. This slide is the logo for Gateway to Community Living. And it's important for me just to kind of discuss Gateway for just a minute. Now, Jeremy, if we can now go to slide 12. And this slide talks about the Gateway to Community Living program. Many of you may have heard about this program, but M4A ombudsman representatives help promote Gateway to Community Living, which is a Medicaid waiver program that supports individuals who wish to transition from nursing homes to community living. Now, Jeremy, if we can move to slide 13. In this slide, I've provided the information on how to make a referral to Gateway to Community Living. I want to give folks just a little bit of time just to jot down the various ways to make referrals to the Gateway program. You can email the program. You can mail a referral in. There's just various ways to do that. And so I just want to take just a minute for folks to be able to write down this information before moving on to the next slide. Pretty much referrals to Gateway can be made by a resident. A lot of times it's the nursing home's social service department. Maybe a resident has either come to them, or a social worker from the facility has gone into a resident's room. The resident has mentioned wanting to maybe apply for the Gateway to Community program. And then, of course, that nursing home social worker can then make the referral. Of course, people do call me as an ombudsman representative, and I can make that referral as well, or maybe it's a resident's legal representative. So with that said, hopefully that gave everybody kind of enough time to write down that information. And on slide 4, on this slide, this slide talks about the various needs in which the Gateway program can assist. If a resident qualifies, a transition coordinator will be assigned to the resident who has of course qualified for the program, and that transition coordinator will work with the resident to find affordable housing, secure the necessary services that the resident will need in the community, help with the costs related to the move, such as rental and utility deposits, and the program will provide some financial assistance with purchasing basic supplies, medical supplies, some household furnishings, and provide financial assistance with environmental and vehicle modifications. I do think it's important to mention that there's not an unlimited amount of funds that can be accessed, because there's only the program's only going to pay so much towards some of this. So it's not just an endless supply, but I do want to make sure that folks understand that. And when it comes to help finding affordable housing, the transition coordinator is not going to find affordable housing for that individual. They're going to work with that individual, that resident, or his or her family members, whoever is helping that individual, to find affordable housing. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of information about the Gateway to Community Living. The last slide that I want to mention is the contact information. It's the very, very last one, and I do want to open it up for questions and that anybody might have. But the contact information is here. It's listed. It's got my name as well as Audrey's names. That's our contact information. It's got our email addresses. So with that said, I hope that has helped everybody to understand a little bit about what ombudsman representatives do in advocating for residents. It's the things I've mentioned are very similar to the things that Virginia Bell has said. She just went into a little bit more detail about certain things than I did, but hopefully that helps to give you an idea of what I do on a daily basis. So with that said, thank you very much.
And I'm not seeing any questions, Ryan. I guess that means that you and Virginia did such a good job with presenting today. But again, if you have any questions as it relates to long-term care facilities, or if you're looking to enter a long-term care facility, or especially in the case if you have someone that's already in the facility or you yourself are in the facility, Ryan is a good go-to to answer any of those questions. Now, of course, if for some reason you lose Ryan's contact information, you can always just contact our office. There, the 205-670-5770 number is our main office number. So if you have any issues, just make sure that you ask for the local ombudsman representative for the M4A office, and they can get you connected back to either Ryan or Audrey to look into the case to see if they can help you guys out. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for us. We're going to go ahead, and I think Robin wants to touch on a few things before we end. But thanks again, Virginia and Ryan, for the great presentation. And again, if you have any questions for them, even after this presentation, we are recording. So make sure that you drop those either in our YouTube comment section under this video or on our social media accounts, or feel free to reach out to Ryan or Audrey directly.
Well, I just want to thank the speakers today. It's really a wonderful program, and it's good to know, even for the long-term care staff, that your ombudsman serves as the representative, serves as the mediator between your resident and your staff. So keeping that in mind, the long-term care guide that Ryan had mentioned, he can always get that out to you all. And I wanted to just give you one more resource. They are a little outdated. Our legal service provider, Miss Jan Neal, which a lot of you have heard on these webinars, she put together 4 legal guides, and they're really incredibly done. They're full of information and the cost of long-term care versus in-home care. You can find them on our website at m4a.org, and just go under services and look at our legal service program. And all 4 guides are listed on that program. So it's just another resource for you all. It has a lot of information about long-term care planning. And thank you, Jeremy, too. I couldn't have done this without you with all the technical difficulties we had this morning.
It happens. Virginia, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just thank you to, of course, thank you to you, Jeremy, Robin, and M4A for allowing me and Ryan the opportunity to talk about the program that we both love so much, that all of the ombudsmen across the state really do love this program as well. And as Robin has said, certainly we are there to assist staff to help them do their job even better, because they have a really difficult job, and caring for someone is very, it's a certain kind of role and a special kind of individual to do that. And we know that there are challenges. So we just and I'd just like to thank all those who do care, those who are in the long-term care facilities or healthcare. Thank you so much for your service, for all the things that you're doing, especially in this very, very difficult time. So we just appreciate your work, and we will certainly cooperate and work with you any way we can to help make things better. So just thank you all so much for the opportunity. And you have my contact information, and please feel free to contact me at any time. I'll be more than happy to assist with any concerns or address any issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I did want to add too, if you're catching the tail end of this, and for some, because we're about to wrap it up here, but if for some reason you don't get a link to this, if you've lost your link to the CEU portion here, please reach out to Robin James. You can send her an email at R as in Robin, James, James at M4A, the number 4, the letter A.org, and she can email you back a link to get this done within 24 hours. So just wanted to throw that out there. And I don't think there's anything else left to cover. So with that, we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we thank everyone again for meeting with us. And we hope that you are taking something away from this and spreading it throughout the community to really shed light on a great program. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of the week and stay warm.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.